this is as real as it gets.
This is Phoebe Price, and you're listening to the UCW Radio Show. In your face.
The number you have reached, 911, has been changed to a non-published number.
You're listening to UCW Radio.
In your face.
Give it to me, baby.
All right, welcome to the UCW Radio Show, and thank you for tuning in. As always, we have a great guest waiting to come on the show, and in these times, you know, we're in the holiday season. We're facing a possible, well, more than likely, a fiscal cliff. Taxes are going to be on the rise. A lot of things are going to change, and you know, I think we all need to hear some positive things, some motivational things. And our next guest, he's an actor. He's a motivational speaker. Actually, he's one of the premier keynote speakers on the circuit now. So, and he's also the founder of Quantum Leap Thinking. You want to check that out. All right, but without further ado, please join me in welcoming our guest, James Mapes. James, welcome to the UCW Radio Show. How are you?
I'm terrific, and thank you for having me.
No, thank you for coming at your bio, trying to figure out where we were going to start the show, and I really, was trying to grab onto it, and I don't know, from Hollywood. I mean, you've done a lot of things. You're an actor, public keynote speaker, author, an award-winning performer in your own one-man show, Journey into the Imagination through Hypnosis, and that's something I want to hear more about. But you have so many things going on, and you travel the world, and you work with so many different companies. So I guess I don't know. Let's start at the begining.
Well, let me give you kind of a 2-minute overview of how this came about.
All right, there you
go. As a young man from the Midwest, I had ADD, dyslexia, ADHD, and I probably would have been medicated if there was medication for what I had. I couldn't pay attention. My mind wandered. I was curious about everything. I wanted to do everything. And I muscled my way through college, but I got my degree in theater, my undergraduate in psychology, my master's. And I started off as an actor, but I was always curious about psychology, so I went out on the road for 3 years with different companies acting, and then I came to New York to do soap operas, and I started to study hypnosis. And then that led me into studying the mind and psychology and neurology. And then I had a private practice with hypnosis while I was acting. And then I started to do a one-man show with hypnosis, and that took off. So I was doing like 150 of these a year around college campuses, but I was still acting, and I was still doing the private practice. Then I went into public seminars, and then from there, my manager talked me into going to the corporate field, which was the best of the deal in '82 with Quantum Leap Thinking, because I loved it. I could do everything I wanted. I traveled the world, and it paid a lot of money. And then I never stopped all the other stuff, and it took me 14 years to write my first book, and that became a bestseller. And I've been writing another one for 9 years. I've just about done, and I just launched today. This is an odd conversation for this, but today, after 3.5 years, I just launched a project to hospitals to help pre-surgery patients reduce their fear and heal faster and get rid of stress and get off narcotics sooner.
Yeah, well, it's not an odd topic for the show because we speak about everything, and basically your life, your background is eclectic, and I dig that because you have so many positive things going on, and that is what inspires people. Even tonight, being on the show, you obviously you were speaking today. And, some people may just say, all right, well, I can't do this. I am tired, but you keep going. You have this this passion about life, and that's great. And I guess that's what has led you to going out there and speaking. Yeah, you get paid well for doing that, but I kind of believe that you enjoy helping people.
Oh, today was an interesting day. I don't get paid for this kind of thing that I did today, but as I said before, when we were just chatting, I had never done anything like this. This is a group of 25 to, well, I guess a 30, 14 to 18-year-olds, mostly African American, who have been in jail. They've been, they don't have a home. They're in foster homes. So when I was asked to do this, I went to myself, I'm probably going to be beat up. I'm a 6'3" white guy, and but I know people, and I know young people, and I was just telling my wife this before you called. I said, I have to tell you, in my wildest imagination, I never thought it was going to have the impact it did, because I do interactive stuff too, and I tell the truth. I mean, as a child, I got in a lot of trouble. I mean, lots of trouble, not just like a little bit of trouble, but I was angry, and because I was a big guy, and I hated sports, and I liked theater. I mean, that's, what is the guy? Is he gay? Is he straight? Is he, what is he? And I was just a guy who loved girls and women and had a passion for creativity. Well, where I grew up, creativity was the bottom rung. I mean, writing and acting and painting and music and all that sort of thing. So I have failed a lot in my life, but I teach people two things. One, you got to make friends with failure, and you got to make friends with rejection. And if you can't do that, you're not going to make it in this world. It's just, that's all growth. That's all. You always feel hurt. You always feel rejected, and then you go, what did I learn? And when you get the lesson, then you become better than you were. So my passion for helping people, that's everything. I mean, to me, that's my life.
Well, I think that your background and how you grew up, you were able to connect with these kids today. I'm sure of that, because you know what it is to face adversity and overcome it. And
it's true, and especially when you don't know it's adversity. I mean, when you're young, you just don't know. Later in life, I did.
Yeah.
I mean, I did 1,500 of my one-man shows over the years, including Broadway and Lincoln Center in New York City, the highest of the high. But the first two shows I did, I literally, when I'm telling you this, I literally walked out on stage and somebody threw a bottle of beer at me and said, "Get the hell out of here, you're a phony." And I almost made the decision to quit. And then I said, I'm just going to keep forging ahead. And I built it into an award-winning show. But the point is, you don't do anything in life unless you're willing to get out there and fail, because how else are you going to learn? If everybody succeeded, there would be no success, because everybody would be a success.
Oh, that's true. And look, the most successful people I know have failed more than most. And,
absolutely.
Because you go through it. I mean, even Thomas Edison. I mean, how many times did he fail?
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Yeah. And it's interesting. I told a story today. I haven't told in years, but my nephew, when he came into my life and grew up, what he saw with his uncle was a guy out there doing shows and doing corporations on creativity and leadership and doing this and doing that. And he said to me, "I want the quick money." He said that. And I said, "Well, I never have gone for money, ever. I come from a very, very poor family. It was never my intention. It was all about my passion." And so he is where he is in life today, which is, in my judgment, I certainly am wrong in my judgment, because he wanted the quick fix. And I studied martial arts for 12 years, and I started very late in my life because I was too afraid at first, and then I thought I was too old, and then I started. And for years and years, until I got my first black belt, you had to go back and be a beginner. You never went into your dojo without going back to do what you did at the very beginning. It was frustrating, but to learn the basics and go back to the basics and understand there ain't no free lunch, and you got to go with your passion, because people get. I spend a lot of time talking about this. What do you love to do? And above all, what are your strengths? My strengths and my weaknesses, I know and I freely admit. I'm not a detail person. I screw up when it comes to detail, so I have a personal assistant. I can't do it. I can't. And I'm kind of a space cadet. My mind's a 20-ring circus, so I got my bases covered for that, and I've learned that over the years. But my strengths are, one is I'm a people person, and so my strengths are with people, networking. And my other strength is I love to teach. I love to take complex ideas and make them simple for people. Now, so if I play to that, I'm okay. But if I try to say, well, what am I weak at? Gee, I'm weak at math, and I'm weak at logistics, and so I say, I better go study that to get myself better. I'm doomed, because the truth is I'm playing to my weaknesses, not my strengths. So people need to identify their strengths. They need to identify their values. My top 3 values in life, and I do an exercise with people in my workshops, there are only about 52 values, but my top 3 values are love, freedom, and fun. And those, then the fourth one is making a difference. But those are my top 3 values. And so I need to do in life what satisfies those, or I'm going to be a very unhappy camper. And when I'm an unhappy camper, it's not a pretty sight. Yeah. So and what's my passion? You listen to my career, I'm curious. Curiosity to me is one of the greatest signs of people, and that's squashed in a lot of people. They're put in a box, and you've got to just, what engages you? I worked with a person once as a private peak performance coach, and he couldn't get a grip on a career. And I finally, he said, I love to read. How am I going to make a living at that? Well, the cut to the present, he's one of the top script readers for a major studio. And so there's always a way to figure out how to turn your passion into a living, and also it usually has to do with helping someone or fulfilling a need.
Yeah, and that I agree with you 100%. I think, a couple of points that I just want to make on what you just said. A lot of people think that they have to do everything by themselves and they have to, handle everything. I used to be like that, but someone taught me something. I used to be on Wall Street for a while. They taught me something, and he said, you know what? You may not be the smartest guy in the world, but this is how you compensate. You surround yourself with smart people, and that's going to help you to achieve what you need to achieve. And secondly, with people, I think that a lot of young people have the misconception that chasing the money is going to make them happy. The money is the easy part of the deal. That's the easy thing. Working towards what you love to do so it's not work, I believe, is the hard thing, and once you get past that, the money will come. It'll come, but you have to find where your niche is. So I agree with everything that you were saying, James.
And the first thing that you said, it's very interesting you should say this, because I've been a loner. I've never had a boss since I was 16 when I worked at McDonald's, and I got fired for hitting somebody over the head with a box of 32 buns. And
You're killing me.
So that's good news and bad news, because I was not a team player for a long time. Now I've reached a point in my life, some years ago, where I discovered that I can't have a boss, but I can have a partner. And that means that who I surround myself with is extremely important. I don't surround 26 years ago, my wife brought me in her office, and she said, if you're to be with me, you have to know something. And on her wall, she had a sign that says, I will not be around people that vex the spirit. So, and then she goes on to explain that there are life enhancers and life diminishers. And if you surround yourself with life diminishers, people who complain, people who are negative, you may want to save the world, but it will suck your energy to the bone. And every few years, I do something that may sound harsh to your listeners. I do an evaluation of all the people in my life, and there have been times that I've had to eliminate people, gently and lovingly, by the way, and that I just move them out of my life, because what they're doing, they're not enhancing. They are depleting. And people take, there are a lot of people that just want to take, not give. That doesn't mean that you can't receive. So relationships are incredibly important, and I did not get anywhere I am in life without tremendous support, tremendous partners, working in a win-win situation. And so that's a great point.
Well, I think, you know, what you said. You said it may sound harsh, but it's reality. You know, when you surround yourself, when you have negative people, when you have the naysayers around you, I mean, when people like that are around me, I'm like, yeah, did you bring the razor blade with you so I can slit my wrist in the process? You know, I personally, and a lot of our listeners, you know, are positive people. They look to be inspired, and the reality is, for me, having negative people around doesn't work because that hinders my progress as it does with most people. But a lot of people don't realize it because what should be abnormal becomes their normal, and that's scary.
Exactly.
That's scary.
That's why that people have. I believe, and I don't say people have to do anything, for goodness sakes, but it's if you choose to introspect, if you choose to really look at your life and your relationships, you can't lose. In a new book I've been working on, and probably your listeners know the definition of the conscious and the subconscious mind. But to me, I do a 6-minute talk to corporations. I call it the history of the mind in 6 minutes, and what all the neuroscience. I mean, a lot of what we're talking about has practical application and is based in science, and that is that the conscious mind, that little voice in your head that you talk to yourself with, the visionary, the critical, judgmental self, and that's only 10% of our mind. All brain science has shown that 90% of our mind is a subconscious. It doesn't think. It's the emotional center. It's the memory center. It's the primitive fight or flight mechanism. And what I say to the people that I talk to, I said, let me tell you something, and I lay this out in a way of neuroscience proves it, and I go, if you're a control freak, you better leave the room. The reality is we don't have control over our mind, but we do have control in the sense that we can influence our subconscious. And that takes very specific tools of evaluation and visualization and self-talk, and because surrounding yourself with negative people, well, that inputs to part of us that can't tell the difference between a real or an imagined experience. When I talk at the beginning of all my workshops, and today I did the same thing, this was what won the audience. I take a lemon, and I say, look, we're going to play a little game in the imagination. What I'm going to do, I'm going to count to 3 and take a big bite out of this lemon. And I want you to imagine, when I do this, biting it with me. And the way you do that is to recall a lemon, the shape and the color, and I describe it, and I cut it in half, and I say, and the juice that dribbles out of it. I say, you ready? 1, 2, 3. I take a big bite out of this lemon, and the juice runs down my chin. And I stop, and I gather myself, take a slug of water, and I say, how many of you had a reaction to that? Well, the same result today with a group of people that never wanted to think about this young group that I was talking to. About 90% of them raised their hand. I said, you just created something out of nothing. And how you did that is because our subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between a real or an imagined experience. So when you project in the future and you imagine negative things happen, well, that influences our choices. But it's not wrong to do that as long as you project in the future and you go, aha, I'm afraid of that happening. What can I do now as a guard against that happening? So you turn negative thinking into positive planning.
Well, I think that's the same, and I'm just going to get maybe a little bit raw. I think that's the same when someone sees when a guy sees another guy get kicked in the private parts. They feel it. It's just. You know,
it's genetic,
yeah.
Louis.
but you feel it because you have that in your mind and you see it. Same thing with the lemon. I guess it's something that's like recalled in your memory. Just comes.
It's
out.
also empathy.
Yeah,
it's part of what makes us human. If we're sensitive in any way, we empathize with other people, and so what they feel, we feel. You surround yourself with people who are always complaining and blaming. Especially blame is the worst. I talk a lot about fear, rejection, change, success, failure, and commitment. And this is only James May speaking here. I believe there are only 2 emotions in life. And the two emotions are love and fear. And anything you throw at me is going to be put in those categories. And when love, and I don't mean gooey love, I just mean a way of seeing the world. So when love, which has to do with letting go and forgiveness, when love is there, fear can't be. When fear is there, love can't be. They cannot exist in the same time and space. And so when people start to recognize the power of fear, which is guilt, feeling guilty about not doing something or doing something or I should do something, you're doomed as long as you stay in that without resolving it or blame. You blame God, the government, or your mother or your father, you're doomed. Because once you blame, you have no choice. There's no road of action. You can't, I don't want to get cosmic, but heal yourself or make positive choices. So fear is something to investigate and really examine as to how it controls us, because it does, and we don't know it most of the time.
Yeah, it does. I mean, that's what makes, I guess, makes people want to explore things, because they have a fear of like going into outer space. But then we went to the moon. We go here. We go there. It kind of piques your curiosity as well. The fear.
Well, with curiosity, I put fear into three categories. The first category is what I call delicious fear. And I feel that when I walk in front of an audience. I felt it today. I feel it when I race cars or scuba dive. I mean, there's a lot. It's fear, but it's also a really cool kind of energizing feeling. And then there's primitive fear, which is the way our brain is programmed. It's fight or flight. It's either we look at things as a threat or we don't. And then the third fear, which is the one that I talk a lot about, write about, is called illusory fear. And that is when we interpret things that are happening in a way that creates us to be in primitive fear. For example, everyone is afraid of rejection, and I certainly am. And I've never met anyone who isn't on some level. But if fear controls you and you don't know it, fear is the fear of isolation or being alone. So that's kind of in the deepest part of us. So if we're ruled by that, if it governs us and we don't know it, what happens is we either isolate ourselves so that we can't be hurt, or we reject somebody before he or she can reject us, or we don't go out in the world or communicate. Now, we do it to protect ourselves, but why I call illusory fear the great trickster is what's happened is we have the same result as if the fear. In other words, we're isolated. We've isolated ourselves. Or the other side of the coin, which happens on all fears, is if we become dominating, controlling, or a bully. We push people away, and then we go, hi, how come no one likes us? So that fear on an unconscious level has manipulated us to have behavior that creates the fear. And the same thing goes with failure. We don't take risks, or we take too many risks. But there's a way for people to start to think about what they don't have in their life. And then to look at the choices they're making. And this is the most difficult word in my profession, is to be accountable, to own that. And without blaming yourself. Because this is not about right and wrong, good, bad, or blame. This is just simply about what you're all about, Louis, is you help people to recognize and make better choices in their life.
You need to do that, and accountability is a key thing. We need to keep sending that message to Congress. Accountability.
Oh, boy, do we ever, huh?
We're going over that fiscal cliff. Hopefully they come to some sort of resolve sooner than later. We'll cross on our fingers. But, yeah, it's funny with your illusory, all right? I was doing some research, and you don't know it, but I was looking at one of your videos. You have me looking at the plus sign, and all these lights are going around in a circle, and my eyes are like flipping out. I said, "Oh, I'm going to get James on the show now." but it's interesting. It really is interesting that your mind begins to see something that's not there.
Well, people can go to the website jamesmapes.com and see that. But what Louis is referring to is that I show this illusion in all my workshops because it's hard. I'm not even going to tell your listeners on this, but it's an illusion where you see what isn't there. And that's the same thing that happens with illusory fear. You see things, you invent. I was talking to my wife about this about 3 days ago. I was very upset because an acquaintance of mine, a close acquaintance, has not communicated with me. Now, when communication is number one with me. So when people don't communicate with me, I start to make up reasons why they don't, right? So I start to say, what did I do wrong? And so my wife says, why don't you read page 57 of your book? I say, I hate it when that happens.
You even have to revisit your own book sometimes. But,
I revisit.
Yeah.
I don't stop. Susan, my wife, says living with me is like living with her head in a Cuisinart. I don't get off the phone and stop this. This is my life.
Yeah, but you know something, James? How you are, and you continue to push yourself. You have been for your whole since you're a kid. You push yourself because you have to, because that's something that's inherent in you. Where you could have easily, at any given time, before you've achieved success, before you started writing books, before you hit theater, before you did a lot of things, you could have just accepted your situation and said, okay, this is my life, and that's it.
Boy, are you right. I'll tell a very quick story. 3 years and 2 months ago, I was shooting a film in Scotland. I was acting in a dream part. And I'm not a young man, I'm very physically active. I was working 18 hours a day, rehearsing, putting 18-year-olds to shame. So I did this part in a film called The Wicker Tree, a mystery thriller, and I got home to Connecticut. My wife and I came back, and I got depressed, and I was depressed for 3 days. And that's not an emotion I feel. I feel angry, frustrated. I never feel depression. So I said, I'm going to go talk to my internist. So I go to my physician. He said, you know what? Why don't you go across the street and talk to your cardiologist? So I went across the street, and they did what's called an echocardiogram, where they kind of measured the pulse of my heart. And that night I was going out with a buddy of mine for lobster and martinis. He was taking me out, my stockbroker, and I was waiting. It was 2 minutes to 6. It was raining, and I'll never forget this. And the phone rang. It was my cardiologist, and he said, James, I know you're stubborn, so I'm going to just put this up front. You have less than 2 weeks to live. You have an aortic aneurysm, and you are not going to survive. So I went in and had 3 martinis. But it was something. Believe me, I had my heart taken out of my body and rebuilt, basically. So before I went into this, I made a decision. This is to your point. I said, I was scared shitless. Mm-hmm. And so I said, the only way I'm going to get through this is to go into it and learn everything I can, so when I come out, I am going to have a new program to help people in my situation. So I went in, I started to question nurses. I created a program, which as of, let me just look at the time here, 6 hours and 15 minutes ago is absolutely completed. And it's packaging, it's recording. It's a 2-disc CD called Patient Pre-Op Post-Op Healing Therapy. And what it does is it eliminates all fear. It gets people calm. It helps them heal 30% faster and gets them off narcotics sooner, and I mean it's phenomenal. And we put it in Bridgeport Hospital in Connecticut. But so out of that adversity, where I could have folded or whatever, you get depressed, you give up, you don't know what. If people in adversity create a goal or a vision of themselves that's stronger than the fear, it's going to drive them through the fear. It pulls you through it.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, James. I didn't know. That's something I didn't know that you went through, and to pull through that and still do what you're doing and be as active as you are, I commend you on that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. The reality is, you're right. You could have easily sat in that bar, had your Connecticut special, because that's the lobster and the martini, and you could have just been depressed and been sad and kind of given up on a lot of things, but you decided not to.
And out of that, I came what I call 5 keys to living an exceptional life, which is part of this program. And I'll run you through these very fast. But the first one is make friends with reality. Mm-hmm. And most people, not most people, but people have a tendency when they're hit hard with something negative to deny or blame when you have no control then. So when you make friends with reality and you're willing to see things as they absolutely are, you can take action. You can make plans. You can gather, what you need to do. And the second thing is attitude. I question nurses in the hospital and doctors, and I've questioned 200 or 300 cents. And the question was, do people with a better attitude have a better survival rate? And unanimously, they said there have been people that shouldn't have had problems that either had a lot of problems or actually died, and these were the people that bitched and complained and yelled and argued and weren't grateful. And then there were people that should have had more problems, but they were the ones that were grateful and thanked us. And I mean, attitude is everything. Attitude is everything in getting hired in a job. It's everything in getting good friends in your life. And the third is be willing to ask for support. A lot of people say, "Hey, I can do this alone. I don't need anybody." But when you ask for support, what most people don't know is neurologically in the brain we are wired for reciprocity, meaning that if we do a good deed for someone, we're wired genetically to do a good deed back. So if you want to have a good support group, just do a lot of good deeds in the world.
There you go.
Right? The next thing is be grateful. And that I do a whole exercise with people on all my private coaching clients. And the fifth, what I call the 5 keys of living exceptional life, is having a vision in place that can strong enough to carry you through any crisis. It doesn't matter if someone dies or you fail or you get fired, but if you've got a vision in place, it's like a rubber band tied to the future. It creates a tension. And yes, you may mourn, you may feel upset, you may feel sorry for yourself, but it's all temporary. And then you go back to that vision, and that creates the excitement, the energy to move through adversity.
And you know about adversity. I mean, you're like you're an amazing person, James. All right, and what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break because I want to get into more stuff with your acting and your martial arts. I want to talk about some more things, but we're going to take a quick break, so just stay with us, and we're going to be back on the UCW radio show with James Mapes. We're going to be touching on some things, so you want to stay tuned. Just hang on. We'll be right back.
Thought I could live for days on the scraps you threw my way, but how quickly I lost my appetite. Want someone to believe in, and to believe in me. Now I'm wondering why did you have such a
Tonight, we continue a tradition here at the White House by honoring some extraordinary people who've no business being on the same stage together. We've got Buddy Guy sitting next to Dustin Hoffman. We've got Dave Letterman alongside one of the greatest ballerinas of all time. I don't think Dave dances. All three living members of Led Zeppelin in one place. So this is a remarkable evening, and it speaks to something that has always made this country great. The idea that here in America, more than any other place on earth, we are free to follow our own passions, explore our own gifts, wherever they may lead us, and people from all around the world come here to make sure that they too can provide us the incredible gifts that they have. Tonight's honorees didn't just take up their crafts to make a living. They did it because they couldn't imagine living any other way. And that passion took each of them from humble beginnings to the pinnacle of their profession. And tonight, in the People's House, we have a chance to say thank you.
All right, welcome back to the UCW Radio Show. We're here with our great guest, James Mapes. James, welcome back to the show. Thank you for hanging on there. I want to get into more things with your life. Forget about your career,
Sure.
your careers, your life. Now, one question I have: when you grew up in the Midwest, and there had to be a turning point for you where you made a decision to. You made a decision to change your life for the better. You weren't chasing the money, but you made a decision. At that moment.
Oh yeah, I can tell you when that is.
Yeah, definitely tell us about that because I want to.
I grew up in a very poor family, very poor, and my mother always, every day in my life was not enough, not enough. Well, how are we going to survive? Depression mentality. I got caught stealing for the first time when I was 8. Then it was 10. And then I stole again when I was in junior high school, and it followed me on a path that just I thought was going to do me. And then I got really angry, and I started creating these fake bombs with gunpowder, and I was kicked out of school for a while, got back. And then I went to my first year of college, which was all done by me, and then I got kicked out for stealing and fighting. And and then my aunt and uncle, who had no money, took me in, built a little room in the basement for me, and I went to a junior college. And I literally woke up in my mind, and I said, all the stealing stuff had to do with other stuff. But I woke up and I said, you're not listening to people out there. You're not taking in the support that you have. You got to get rid of your anger. You got to get rid of the stuff. And I made the decision, I remember it, I can only turn my life around because I was going to end up in jail. There was no question about it. And I made a decision, and I went from the first year of college with a D+ average and being kicked out to a straight A. And it was tough, and it was miserable. But I also made a decision that I was going to go to college and study acting, which my parents didn't want me to do. They wanted me to have a much more stable career. So I applied and was accepted at a college in California State University, and I soared. I studied philosophy. I studied psychology. I studied acting. I got my master's degree, and I earned everything that I paid for my whole college. And when I got my master's degree, I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. Everybody wants to be in theater, but I didn't stop. I went out. I slept under a stage earning $15 a week at the New Jersey Shakespeare Festival. I was taken in by somebody that helped me. I ended up in a Shakespeare company in New Orleans for a year and I was a master carpenter and an actor. And out of that, I came to New York and started hustling. I didn't have any connections, and everybody said, you got to do it this way. And I've never listened to rules. So I broke all the rules, and within 6 months I had 5 commercials running. I was doing soap operas. And then within another 6 months I started studying hypnosis. And I didn't know anything about it. And I was taken in by someone who was one of the greatest teachers in the world. I didn't know it or appreciate it at that time. He wrote 60 books. His name was Harry Aarons, Dr. Harry Aarons. And I learned and studied the mind, and that got me on a path. Now, my first film after soap operas, Guiding Light, Edge of Night, Search for Tomorrow, One Life to Live, was Taxi Driver.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a story about Taxi Driver. I had one line, and it was cut out of the movie. But on the Academy Awards, there was, you ever watch the Academy Awards?
Oh, every year.
Okay, so there's always a film clip showing from a movie.
Mm-hmm.
I happened to be in that film clip for Taxi Driver.
Oh,
It just, who would have figured? I mean, it was a total accident. But because of that, I got another soap opera, and then I continued my acting. I was out on tours and bus and truck tours and off Broadway, and I've done about 14 films, Star Trek, a couple Star Trek films, and Conversations with God. Last film I did is called The Wicker Tree. So I've never stopped. My wife and I are writing a script this winter. I'll start raising money in the spring. So I made a decision in let me just think when this was, 1975. I made a little graph on my bulletin board, and I said, I want to be it wasn't the word celebrity, but it was the only thing I could come up with, because what I wanted was 5 careers.
Mm-hmm.
And no one's ever had 5 careers. And it took me 14 years to write my first book. And I failed a lot with that because I had dyslexia, I wouldn't get any help, and then a publisher grabbed it. And then I became an author. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And then that leveraged my speaking, because now I had the credibility, this fabulous, which I love this book, and it still gets a lot of play. So then, I'm jumping around here, so stop me whenever you want. I decided, when I was 30,
I'm captivated, so
okay.
I'm just listening to you now.
When I was 30, I was too scared to start martial arts.
Mm.
When I was 40, I thought I was too old. So I waited, of course, being me, till 50, right?
Okay.
And I go in, and I dedicated myself to this. I mean, I had to work harder than anyone because I was 50 years old. So I did that for 12 years. And I learned so much from martial arts. And one is that you got to go back to the basics. You've got to constantly practice, and you're always a beginner, because every time you progress in martial arts, and I studied Kempo karate, every time you progress, they give you something new, so you feel like a dope. I mean, you don't. So you're always on the edge of being a beginner, and that's what I always tell people: is be a beginner. Don't let your ego get in the way of anything. Ego's bullshit.
Yeah.
And ego is never good. Anybody that says I got a healthy ego or you should have all that's bad. Ego is nothing but fear. So you which means, well, you said before, it's being accountable and responsible, curious. You take thought out risks. I didn't do that for a long time. I did in 1973. I produced my first theater up in Maine. I raised money off a hope and a prayer. I hired a whole New York company, borrowed money, did money, and I needed money. So somebody said, "Do you do stunt work?" Yes. I don't do stunt work. And they were shooting a movie up there. I said, "Do you ride a motorcycle?" I said, "Yes." Never been on a motorcycle in my life. I had an hour lesson, right? So I go to do stunt work on a movie. I end up breaking my fingers and my arm and my hand, which is still screwed up. So I've learned a lesson over the years. I've always jumped in the lion's den and figured out how to fight the lion. Now I'm getting a little smarter. At least I take lessons on how to control a lion.
There you go.
But you got to take risks. There's no, if you don't take some risks, well thought out risks, you don't learn. You don't fail. You don't grow.
Yeah, and just to touch on martial arts, and again, I think that's fantastic that even when you hit 50 that you got involved in the arts, and you made a point about something about always everything goes around full circle, yin yang. You go, that's why you go from a white belt, or go all the way around. You wind up at a white belt again. I mean, this is the cycle. Okay,
Yep.
Dan Inosanto, that's Bruce Lee's one of his number one students. But Joe Louis said it. We had Jeff Smith on the show the other day, and Bill Superfoot Wallace. All great guys, and they all agree on this: that you always have to be learning, always forever be a student, always learn.
Boy, is that the truth.
Yeah.
I'm going to the library, not library. I'm going to the bookstore all the time, and I'm buying books that stretch my mind. I mean, I don't always understand anyone, and I think, it's funny. We're talking, and here's the undercurrent of who I am, right? Which has never gone away. I'm a fat, stupid child who got beat up a lot. Well, that never goes away. I don't care what anyone says. Mm-hmm. It always hovers around. And so I spend my life learning and making a difference, and probably trying not to be that fat, stupid child who was beat up a lot.
Yeah, but isn't it amazing that you can go through certain dramatic and traumatic things when you're younger, and people say, "Well, you'll get over it. You'll forget about it," but you never actually forget about it, and it's like you think about it, it's like it happened yesterday.
It is,
yeah.
And that's part of the beauty and both the beauty and the curse of what's called the subconscious mind, is it doesn't have a time sense. One of my skills, which I was known for as a hypnotist, is age regression. That's taking people back in their past. Mm-hmm. So I worked a lot with the New York Police Department to help witnesses to a crime or victims to a crime recover memories that they couldn't recover, and I worked a lot with child abuse victims. Mm-hmm. And what I learned over that 15-year period, and I still do now and then, is that our memories don't go anywhere. They become they change and they warp, but they're still what we believe to be true. Mm-hmm. So maybe my memory of going on the kindergarten yard for the first time when I didn't want to be in school and being hit in the face isn't real, but it's real to me, and I've acted off of it. So none of that stuff. And that's why, this is a whole other subject, but the last 3 chapters of my new book that I'm working on is letting go, forgiveness, the ultimate let go, and tools for forgiveness. The first part of the book's all about perceptions in the mind and values and all that sort of thing. But what I've discovered over the years, and I've worked with professional golfers, I've worked with people who are getting divorced, I've worked with people who are stuck in their careers and CEOs who can't manage their team. What I've discovered is everyone who comes to me has to let go of something. Mm-hmm. It could be letting go of a grudge you hold from somebody who's been dead for 25 years, or it can be letting go of somebody who didn't hire you, or it could be letting go of a betrayal, or it could be letting go of your image about yourself.
That's a key thing. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Good. I think that's important. But go ahead. I'll let you.
No, that's it. That's kind of it. So letting go is a huge thing for people to understand.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people out there, and I come across it too, that have they have such a low value of their image. They think that they are not worth this much, or they can only get this person or be with this type of person. But meanwhile, they're not going out there and not venturing out to live a fulfilling life. You have to live. You have to be happy in your life. Some of the wealthiest people, in the world are some of the most miserable pricks out there. And I say that, because it's true. Because money doesn't make you happy.
Because money is, we were talking about this the other night at a dinner party. And because I have a depression mentality coming from not enough, and now I've changed around, is that money, you've got to look at what money means to you. And that is that, to me, all money means is one thing. Number one, I got freedom. Mm-hmm. Number two, I can do things for other people. Now, I'm not a great philanthropist, and I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. And so it gives me great joy to do things for people. But money is, you've got to figure out what do you, if you want, I want to be rich. What does that mean? What's it going to give you? Because I used to do a workshop on abundance. Mm-hmm. I haven't done this for years, but I will tell you how I started, which was a hoot. I did something a little illegal. I'd come out, I had about 50 people, and I'd take a $100 bill and pass it around the room. And they'd pass it back to me, and I'd take a lighter and burn it up. And I'd say, what do you think? Well, there are people with their jaw hanging open. You know, there were some people who said, I don't give a crap. That's your money, not mine. And other people say, are you insane? That's $100. So the whole point of that demonstration, which they got, was, what do you project on the almighty dollar? What do you project? It is nothing, and people aren't going to get this. It's nothing in itself. It represents something for you. So once you grab a hold of what that means, for me, again, it's freedom. Having money has allowed me to create more things to give people. Now, again, I've got to have the money to do that, and hopefully, eventually, the things I create for people will give me money back or not. But that's my joy. That's my personal joy.
Well, I think you're hitting the nail on the head with that. Because money it gives you the freedom. Money gives you live comfortably, okay, and that's great. But you have to do something else to have you have your life filled with joy, with happiness, and things of that nature. And I think people sometimes lose sight of it. Look, my background is, for the most part, business is Wall Street, so people chase the money. Okay, and I've seen a lot of miserable people, and they're very wealthy, but they were miserable because they were chasing the money and not actually doing what they enjoyed doing, not living their dreams as opposed to just dreaming. And that you have to kind of do something with it. And what's funny, James, about you is that I think this was like in 2000. I'm going to say 2003, 4, something, 5, something like that, whenever it was. But there was this frenzy. This lady went on Oprah with her book, and all this stuff happened. Secret this, secret that, all this stuff, but you are in my view, you're the originator of that. I guess perceiving something, having it in your mind, and actually executing. Because if you
the secret's all about the law of attraction, and I liked it, but I didn't love it. And the reason I didn't love it, it left out a very, very, very important part of it.
Actions?
You bet.
There you go.
You bet. Persistence, commitment, and action. Because if you just look at the secret, you think, well, I'm going to sit here in my chair and visualize what I want, and it's going to happen. Well, that's just nuts. But that sells a lot of books. Now, there's a hypnosis demonstration I do. I'll tell you the demonstration, then I'll tell you why I do it. I tell 2 people at once, and this is in front of a couple thousand people, with a hypnosis suggestion. You can't remember the number 6, and then to the other person, you can't remember the number 7. You can't say it, see it, or hear it, and you won't remember that I told you that. So I've set up what's called a paradigm or a belief system, temporary. And then I have them count their fingers, and it gets a great laugh because they count 11 fingers. And then I take out $2,000 and I put it on a table. I took $20, $100 bills, and I say, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have this audience of 2,000 people shout out a number. If you can tell me the number, take the 2,000 and go back, right? So first of all, I have them shout out the total of 3 and 3. So the 2,000 people are going, 6! And I turn to the person that I gave that suggestion to. What did you hear? What do you mean, what did I hear? Then I do the same thing with the number 7 person. I didn't hear anything, or I heard a roar. I didn't hear anything. I said, don't try to please me. There's $2,000. Take it to go back to the audience. Then I have my assistant take a flip chart, and they write the numbers on it. And the people cannot perceive the numbers, 6 or 7. Now, I'm telling you, and people listen to say, oh, yeah, right. We did this on Broadway. We did it at Lincoln Center. I've done it over 1,500 times. I've never lost a dime. And the reason, if you look at the secret, the law of attraction, the point is we don't see in life what we don't believe. It's very simple. It's not rocket science. If I said and I showed you videos of blonde people with blonde hair, and then I set you out in a crowd of 1,000 people with different colored hair, and I say, see who you spot first, you're going to spot the blondes. Because we see what we expect to see. That's the way life works. That's the law of attraction. So if you visualize what you want, it isn't going to guarantee you're going to get it, and you never get it the way you think you're going to get it anyhow. But if you use the power of visualization, it helps you. It's like putting antennae up on the back of your head. You start to see things and meet people, and you think situations, this was an accident. No, it's just you take all this information that's out in the world. If you were in an airport and you hear all the intercoms, you're not going to hear anything. You don't pay attention to anything. Mm-hmm. However, if it said, Lewis, listen to my voice, you're going to go, oh, what the hell? Out of all this chaos. So we have kind of an antennae up in the world, and we attract, and that's why you get to know yourself, to look around in your life. See who's in your life. Are they crumbs and people that don't keep their word, and do a house clean. Start to change your view of yourself, and you're going to start to attract different people.
Well, I think that's important because you talked about it earlier about having positive people around you, having people that can enhance your life, and not. And again, I said this a few times. It has nothing to do with finances. People that can enhance your life, bring happiness. Maybe you're working on a project. Maybe they can be a positive influence on what you're doing and how you're growing. Because even at this stage, James, you're still growing as a person.
Oh, that I am.
Yeah, and we're all growing as people, and you don't want to be the person because when you're at 30, you're a different person than you were at 20, and 40, you're different than you were at 30, and so on and so forth. And you grow. And I think that what you're doing, with your breakthrough thinking and change management, your team building, everything that you do, and what we've spoken about on this show, for me, it's like amazing stuff. That's why I think that our listeners should embrace you, because you speak truth. You're not pitching something where you have people out there pitching. I'm the best of this. You haven't said that.
Because there are a lot of people a lot better than me.
Yeah, but you bring some truth to the situation. You bring reality. You've been through things, and that's why when you spoke to those kids earlier today, they embraced you. Because they said, "Well, he's one of us."
Hopefully.
Yeah. Now, are they going to, take it, they're going to remember this tomorrow? I don't know. You can only hope.
You can only do what you do. That's the truth.
That's it. And that's what you're doing, and that's why you go out there and you go. It's not so much, you're not just motivating people, you're giving them tools so they can.
That's what's important.
Yeah.
And I hope people will visit the website, because I have a lot of archived articles, and they can download them for free. And every one of these articles, every one of them, is tools.
Yeah, man.
They're free. It's free. They go on. You look at something and you go, you know what? Wow, I can manage my self-talk. I can actually do that, or I can look at my values and see what my values are, and maybe look to see if I'm on the right track of life. So I really encourage people to go and take advantage of what I put out there.
Yeah, and just let our listeners know that I went, and when I was doing research on you, James, and kind of looking at stuff, I was intrigued. I said, okay, wow, you're going to inspire people. You've done a lot of things in your life, and it's not about fluff. It's about some real stuff, but you have real techniques that someone can take, they can embrace, and they can use it to enhance their lives, and
Good.
And I like that, because you inspired me.
Well, I'm so pleased you do, and make sure you give on my website so people can go download some of this stuff.
Oh, definitely.
Watch the videos. They're on YouTube too, and everyone gives a little piece of information about the mind.
Yeah. For our listeners, you can go to jamesmapes.com, and I definitely urge you to go and find out more about what he's talking about. Find out about the coaching, the products. Find if he's in your town. If you have the opportunity to go to one of his seminars, something, definitely I'd advise it, because again, this is not. And we talked about it a little bit. It's not some book that, hey, I wrote a book and now you're going to follow me because I'm the Messiah. No, he's given tools for you to enhance your life, and that's what it's about. It's not anything that someone's shoving down your throat. This is, you'll listen to it. Trust me, I did. You'll listen to it, you'll understand, and you'll say, "Oh," a light bulb will go off and say, "Oh," and that was my reaction. Okay, when I listened to your a couple of your videos, James, I was like, "Oh, that makes sense."
I try to make sense.
Yeah, and you do. But before we let you go, I have to ask you something. Now,
Yep.
you were just you just filmed. You did a movie. What was it? The Wicker Man?
Well,
No, the Wicker Tree. The Wicker
I'll
Tree.
tell you, it's called the Wicker Tree. But
Tree.
this is an interesting story. At least I find it interesting. The director of the original Wicker Man with Brett Eklund, Edward Woodward, and Christopher Lee in 1973, 21 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He's a Brit. He's British. He was in Connecticut. He saw my one-man show at Central Connecticut State University with about 2,000 people. It blew him away, 21 years ago. And he wanted to cast me in 2 films, and he lost the financing. And we stayed in touch. He's never forgotten me. And I'll be damned if one day I didn't get a call. He said, "Would you like to play really a terrific part in a film that's the sequel to The Wicker Man?" So I did that. And I'm doing his next film, where it's called Wrath of the Gods. It's the 3rd part in the trilogy. I'm playing a one-eyed. I will give you another website for you or listeners. This is just for fun. This isn't going to, you're not going to learn anything. It's James Mapes, M-A-P-E-S, actor.com, jamesmapesactor.com. Mm-hmm. And you'll see the clips from some of the clips from the films I've done. And so I'm playing this one-eyed, overweight, and I'm in good shape, overweight, one-eyed, horrible villain in his next film. And you'll see the one I did. I play a tap dancing, guitar playing, mandolin strumming, Southern Baptist preacher. Now, I don't do any of those things, but I had to learn them. Damn near killed me to learn them, but I did.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, literally. No kidding.
Oh, well, I think that's again, your story is amazing, my friend, and I hope that our listeners actually gain something from this, because I know I have. That's why I didn't interrupt you a lot, because I wanted to hear what you had to say, because this show's about inspiring people to our listeners, and that's what we've done today. You're an inspiration, and I wish you continued success with everything. And I know I don't even have to do that; it's just going to happen by default. I know that. But what I want to do, James, is I want to bring you back on the show at some point. Okay, so that we can, get an update with what's going on with you. Maybe talk about your next book and things of that nature, because, I just have a feeling that our listeners aren't going to get enough of you. And
well, that would be lovely.
Yeah.
Well, listen, by the next time we talk, this book I've been working on for 9 years, hopefully it'll be out. My new CD will be out for the patient thing, and a lot of good things going on.
Yeah, you definitely do. And again, for our listeners, I do urge you to go to jamesmapes.com, find out more about it, find out about all the books. How many books did you write, James?
I've got 2, and this will be my 3rd. And people can follow me on Twitter, and I'll follow back. And LinkedIn, I love LinkedIn. It's a really good thing. And, of course, I'm on Facebook. And, I had to keep up with the social media thing. That's where it's at these days.
Yeah, you definitely have to keep up with it. So what's your Twitter handle?
At James Mapes.
At James Mapes. So, check him out, follow him, follow this great...
but it's right on the home page, so they just click on the button.
There you go. Just click on a button, follow him, and learn more about you. James, again, thank you for coming on the show, and thank you for everything that you do. And, again, like you spoke to the kids earlier, those are a group of 25 kids. I guarantee you that you probably impact more people than you know.
Well, thank you.
And
thank you for having me on.
No, thank you. And you have yourself a good evening, and we'll have you back on the show at a later date.
Great. Take care, Louis.
Thank you.
Initiating shutdown sequence.
You're listening to UCW Radio. In your face.
What is your major malfunction?
So let it be written. So let it be done.
Ladies and gentlemen, my mother thanks you, my father thanks you, my sister thanks you, and I thank you.